My girlfriend and I love skiing. So last year, during both of our vacation times, we rented a one-bedroom cabin in Colorado. When we made it to the cabin, we noticed that it was far and isolated from everything else. The owner left the key hidden in the mailbox. As soon as I unlocked the door and we stepped inside, we got a huge whiff of dust and old wood. It smelled exactly how you'd expect a log cabin to smell. It wasn't huge, but it was spacious enough, with one bedroom, one bathroom, a decent living room with a TV, and a kitchen. We got there towards the end of the day, so we wanted to grab something to eat before rest. We unloaded and got right back on the road to pick up a pizza for dinner. When we returned to the cabin, we both immediately noticed the living room light was on. My girlfriend was slightly freaking out. I told her to chill. The front door was still locked, confirming that nobody had broken in. I thought one of us left the light on by mistake and didn't notice earlier because it was bright out. So we ate on the couch in the living room while watching a movie. With the dark, moody lighting and the whole log cabin atmosphere, it was quite romantic. However, again, my girlfriend started freaking out about her bag. Apparently, it wasn't where she left it on the coffee table in the living room. I helped her look around, but there wasn't much space to search. She was positive she left it on the coffee table. After searching for it for some time, we found it in the bedroom. It was strange, and a few other things were misplaced as well. We ignored it and thought we might have forgotten we did it. Then we went back to eating and watching the movie. Suddenly, out of nowhere, my girlfriend shrieked. I jumped up and looked at her. She had one hand covering her mouth, the other pointing at something on the ground. At first, I didn't see it, but when I got up and moved closer, I saw it. It was a pair of somewhat fresh boot marks on the rug in the corner of the living room. The snow from the boots had melted into wet stains on the area rug. Obviously, both of us wore boots, but I just didn't remember stepping over there. She was scared and seemed to lose all interest in the movie. We thought this might be enough for the night and we should sleep now. We climbed into bed, shut the light, and we sat there for a while, just talking. It was only like 1 at night, and my girlfriend kept letting me know how uncomfortable she was, thinking someone was in the cabin. And when we went quiet for a moment, we heard some footsteps just beside our bed and behind the wall. I stood up quickly and looked around to see if there was anyone else there. I couldn't find anyone, but both of us could hear someone giggling and walking around the cabin and behind the wall. I couldn't find anyone, but there was something that I noticed from outside. I noticed that there was a part of the cabin that we could not access from inside, but it was visible from outside, and it had a window as well. As I looked closely towards the window, I saw a face looking right at me. I freaked out and ran inside to tell my wife. As I went inside, I took out my phone and dialed the Airbnb host, and I heard the phone ringing. And the ringing was not coming from the phone speaker. I heard a loud, muffled ring coming from behind the wall next to the bed. The ringing stopped as soon as I saw my call was rejected. My girlfriend started screaming as she noticed a slight crack in the wall and an eye behind it looking at us. I was also afraid to look at it, and I wanted to save my wife. As we stood up, I heard those footsteps getting louder, and both of us could see creepy movements behind the wall from that crack. From what we could see, it was an old man with wrinkles all over his face. We couldn't spend a single minute inside that cabin, and I told my wife to just leave everything, and we drove away in our car. We had to spend the rest of that night at a hotel, and the next day we told the police about the incident. We came to retrieve our stuff from the cabin, and the police told us that it was a mistake to book the cabin without doing proper research. But the owner was never caught or heard of ever again. The ad for the cabin disappeared as well after that. The story was so bizarre and disturbing. I don't even expect everyone to believe it when I tell it, but this all happened to us. I bought a vacation mobile home almost 2 months ago. It's a complete shack with 2 small bedrooms, a little living room, a kitchen, and 1 bathroom. It's simply meant as a nice, peaceful place to escape the city by myself for a small vacation trip every now and then. The property had 2 acres, so it's nice and roomy too. The only problem was that there were rumors about the place having mysterious disappearances for a couple of decades. But the rumors didn't bother me, as the price of the property was easier for me to buy because of this reason. My first time there, I was decorating the place with my family. We all went to one of the local furniture outlets in the area and picked out a few couches. During all this back and forth from store to mobile home, I guess the closest neighbor noticed all the commotion, and he came over to greet us. He introduced himself as Chris. He was, I guess, what you'd expect from a local here. He seemed nice at first. We all introduced ourselves, though I knew I'd really be the one needing to get to know him since this was my property. After chatting with him for a while, we tried to resume unloading and bringing furniture into the home. He lingered for a while, just watching us. Eventually, Chris said goodbye and walked back up the road to his home. I left the place with my family for some time to drop them at a nearby relative's place, and I came back to stay there at night. I guess Chris saw my car pass by because soon after I got there, he knocked on the open door and stepped inside and said hello. I smiled at him and told him to come in, which he already was. He told me the place was looking nice already. Then after some small talk, he invited me over for a beer. I thought, why not? And followed him up the road to his home, which is also a mobile home, maybe a little bigger than mine. We then sat outside on his deck. He seemed very strange and creepy. His house was dark and dirty. He grabbed me a drink from inside and sat across from me at the table. So I tried to get to know him. I started by asking how long he's been there. He answered that it's been 20 years. While sitting there, I could hear muffled screams and knocking sounds coming from the basement of his house. When I asked about it, he said that it's his radio. Then suddenly, while talking, he got aggressive and started ranting about how city folk were coming in and ruining the place. He began banging his hand on the table. I stood up and with a smile on my face, I told him that I was going to head back now. He didn't say anything. He just looked down at his beer as I walked away. As I was like 100 feet away from his home, he yelled out at me, things that I couldn't understand. I was horrified by him being my neighbor here. 20 years alone must have had him losing his mind, and maybe he didn't know how to deal with people anymore. But that night, while I was on the mattress I had on the floor, watching a movie on my laptop, I heard a voice from outside. Sounded like someone talking to themselves, cursing to themselves. I looked out the window, but I didn't see anyone out there. It was just simply too dark. The property is big, and it's mostly wooded, so you can imagine how freaked out I was hearing a voice out there. The next day, Chris knocked on my door again around midday. I knew it was him because I heard him calling my name. I didn't want to deal with him again. I stayed in my room. He had to have kept knocking for 5 minutes, which in itself was weird. And at one point, he said that he knew I was in there as the car was outside there. That freaked me out. The guy is clearly not normal by my standards, and he was already giving an early, weird, obsessive vibe. I continued on the rest of my day, almost uncomfortable to go outside in fear he was out there nearby watching to see if I was actually home and ignoring him. After dinner, I started watching another movie on the TV through my phone, and for the second night in a row, I heard a voice outside, even over the TV. I had to turn off the TV to look outside. I couldn't see anything. So I went out to the deck and flicked on the deck light. I saw Chris standing about 5 feet into the woods, arms flat at his sides for a second before he could react to the light, and then he ran into the woods. I went back inside and called 911. As I was lying on the mattress waiting for the police to arrive, I heard Chris outside, screaming in an angry voice and laughing, and eventually he came inside the house breaking the window. Fortunately, right at that point, police arrived and detained him. I was shocked, but what happened next shook me so badly that I had to leave the place at that very moment. Police went and checked his house. Everything was strange, but when they got to the basement from where I heard screams coming previously, they found people tied up and some bodies as well. The man was responsible for the disappearances of lots of people, and later admitted to a lot of stuff that the police didn't even know about. I left that place that night and never got back there. I'm scared now to go up there. In the winter of 2018, to escape the cold weather, my girlfriend Rochelle and I took a vacation trip to a nice beach resort in Mexico. We were going to be there for a whole week, so we had a lot planned. The first couple of days we relaxed around the resort. The surrounding area of the resort was a lot of jungle and abandoned roads, so we took a private shuttle on the third day to the nearest car rental place. The shuttle driver warned us not to stray too far from the coast as there are a lot of unsafe areas. The car rental place was in a small city about 5 miles up the road from the resort. There was this one long road that ran along a bunch of resorts, and next to this road were miles of jungle and occasional small towns. On the third night of the stay, somehow, we got late to reach the resort. We drove for about an hour that night towards the resort. At around 11 p.m., we found a dirt road into a jungle area and got to know that this was a shortcut to our resort through the maps, so we decided to just drive through it. On either side of us was just jungle, probably for miles. We drove down this wide dirt road. Everything around us was pitch black, and the only thing visible was a few meters of road in front of us in the headlights. While I was driving, Rochelle saw someone peeking through the bushes beside the dirt road and kept on complaining. And after 5 minutes, I saw someone running across the road in front of our car. That was a scary-looking figure that I couldn't comprehend. We started to head back in the direction of the main road. Eventually, we were surrounded by a group of people. I don't know where they came from. They just appeared to come from behind the bushes and stood in front of us. Both of us were afraid. I brought the car to a halt and tried to understand what was happening. They were just standing there, looking at us with knives in each of their hand. One of the men came to Rochelle's window and started pounding on it with a knife. As the window was about to break, I stepped on the gas and got the hell out of there. The 3 men were yelling and running after us, but obviously they couldn't run faster than a car. Our hearts were in our throats from that encounter. I didn't let go of the gas until we made it off the dirt road. After that, we didn't really want to drive around anymore. We parked at the resort and tried to forget the incident as a mistake and bad luck, and tried to continue our vacation the next day with high hopes. Unfortunately, while following the path to the next destination, we found out that we had to cross another dirt road, and at that time it was 6 p.m. and the sun was setting. Luckily, we made it to the point before dark and had to walk for the rest of the way. It was a truly peaceful experience that unfortunately had to be ruined when we started feeling like we were being watched. I mean, we heard rustling and footsteps from all around us in the jungle. I told Rochelle to just keep walking. We continued to follow the signs, and out of nowhere, a man appeared on the road, just like he did before. He stood there for a moment and then signaled us to follow him. We didn't. Then he tried to speak a little bit of English and told us that he would guide us to the place. Rochelle and I looked at each other nervously, and we followed the man. He was leading us a different way than we were originally going. It seemed like we weren't following the signs anymore. Rochelle tapped me on the shoulder and then pointed at the man's back pocket. There was the handle of a large knife in his back pocket, and she whispered to me to run. The man noticed and started running after us, but thank the Lord he was slow. We easily outran him. We made it back to the car, and at first I thought he'd stop chasing us, but as soon as we got in the car, again those people emerged from the path we had just come from and tried opening the car doors. They then started hitting the glass, trying to break the windows open. Before any of them could break the windows, we were already moving. Rochelle was crying as hell. We brought the car back to the rental shop and paid its rent and compensation. We shuttled back to the resort from there, and we didn't leave the resort again until we left days later for the airport. I am not sure we will ever be able to get over this incident.